So we're gonna try and test the mic, but we don't know how well you guys can hear me. Is everything okay? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Are you alive? Okay. Cool. Cool. Wait. So like forward, backward, what? Okay. Forward?
Yep.
Is this good? All right. Sounds good. If you don't know already, I am Kate. And I just wanted to start with a little disclaimer. I'm in no way qualified to give this talk, so you guys are in for a real treat for sure. I am Kate. I'll be a sophomore at Benedictine College. I have a disability called cerebral palsy. It is a neurological birth defect that affects my brain and my body, like the nerves don't communicate right, but that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. I was told to come here and talk to you about my experience at Benedictine, so I'm so excited, and I hope you guys like it. So, like any seasoned mass goer, I have my fair share of really, really painfully awkward communion stories, right? And I'm gonna start out by being very vulnerable with you guys and telling you the most awkward communion story that has ever happened to me. So, I'm gonna paint a scene for you, okay? So, 10 p.m. the night before a paper is due, I decided to use my star student skills and start the paper at 10 p.m. and finish it at 4 a.m. I think we've all been there, or at least my procrastinators in the audience, where you at? But yeah, anyway, so I finished at 4 a.m. and my caregivers on Fridays, they have 8 a.m. classes, so they actually had to come get me up at 6 a.m. that day. So I was riding really high on 2 hours of sleep. I was like, all right, yeah. But on Fridays, I only have one class. I had intro to theology. So I was like, chill. Like, all I really need to do is zombie through intro, and then I can go back and sleep. So I went and I learned about Jesus. Love that guy. He's a great dude. And I finished my 11 o'clock. It was about 11:50. And I looked across from the parking lot to our beautiful St. Benedict's Abbey that we have on campus. And I figured, you know what? I love Jesus. I gotta go see him. So we have a 12:10 Mass at Benedictine. And instead of going back and sleeping like I promised myself I would do, I was like, I'll go hang out with Jesus. You know, I'm pretty awake. I had my coffee from Holy Grounds. Shout out to Holy Grounds. Love that place. So I had my Holy Grounds coffee. I was like, you know what? I'm pretty awake. Like, I got this. Jesus will take care of it. So I go to Mass, and I sit in my little spot, bring my own chair like I always do. So I park in my usual spot, and as soon as I heard those monks start singing in harmony with their soothing little voices, I was like, oh no, here we go. Like, I am definitely in for something. And keep in mind, I'm sitting down the whole time. Those of you who stand up during Mass, please consider yourself lucky, because on days where you're riding on 2 hours of sleep, it is really hard to stay awake, and that is a lesson I learned today. So I was just kind of drifting in and out, dozing in and out, you know, whatever. And the consecration starts to happen, and I figure, like, oops, Jesus is dying right in front of me, like, I better start paying attention now. So I jerked myself awake. I was like, Jesus, yes, I love that guy. And then, after the consecration, I closed my eyes to pray, And it just went completely downhill from there. I was totally out for who knows how long. And then, just for reference, to make it easier on me and everyone else who attends Mass at the Abbey, they bring communion back to me, because at that point it was still COVID regulations and you couldn't yet receive it on the tongue, so they would just bring it back to me. And when the priest has to bring communion back to you and you're asleep, it's not a good look. So the next thing I remember opening my eyes and staring at the Abbey ceiling, and I thought, oh no. And I just kind of feel this gentle tug on my arm, and I look down and there's Father right there, and he goes, Kate, do you want to receive? And with all the shame I've ever had in my entire body, I said, yeah. And he just goes, the body of Christ, and I go, amen. And then he just kind of rubs my arm and leaves. And I was like, you know what, to make up for last time, like I better sit and talk to Jesus. And when I was thinking about my journey getting to Benedictine, I thought about how applicable that experience at the Mass was for me. Because, you know, I was weak that day. Like I said, I was riding on 2 hours of sleep. And the first thing I saw when Father chose to nudge me awake was his face. The first thing when I looked down, I saw his face. And the first thing he said was, do you want me? And I thought that was so applicable to what Jesus tells us when we fall asleep in his arms. We look at his face and he says, do you want to receive, do you want me? And we have to actively say yes. Because you see, Father had every right to be like, she's a crazy college kid, I'm gonna let her sleep. But he knew that Jesus actively wanted to pursue me, and after waking me up, I had to actively say yes. So I'm gonna segue with that into a story about when I was a little bit younger and a little bit more arrogant than I am now. I was a 16-year-old searching for colleges, and I had plans to attend the University of Oklahoma. Why? Because I wanted to be just far enough away from my parents, and I could rock some red and white. And I wish I could tell you that there was more weight behind that decision, but if I'm sitting up here and being honest with you guys, I can say that there wasn't. So I was like, oh you, and I was like, Googling stuff for my major, trying to figure things out like any normal 16-year-old who wants to leave home usually does. But I remember one day I came home and my mom was getting me ready for bed, and keep in mind, she was pretty opposed to me going anywhere but WSU or Newman, because, you know, I was her little tiny handicapped being, baby. And she didn't want to say goodbye. So I remember she was putting me to bed one day, and she goes, Kate, I really want you to take this news with God's plan in stride, okay? And I was like, what is it? Because she wasn't talking in her normal chipper voice, and she was like, you really need to take this news with God's plan in stride. And I said, like, oh gosh, what is it? And she was like, I just got off the phone with your caseworker, and for those of you who don't know what a caseworker is, it's the gal who comes every 6 months for people with disabilities to make sure I'm not on the floor dead every 6 months. So she was like, I just got off the phone with your caseworker, and she said that if you were to go out of state as a student, you would lose all your respite care money. And for those of you who don't know what respite care is, that may not seem like a lot, but basically respite care are the people who get me out of bed. They do a lot of meal prep, they brush hair, they brush teeth, they do all the fun things. So basically, my entire livelihood as a college student is riding on the fact that we'll get at least a little bit of money to pay these people so they can come take care of me. And I remember I looked at her and I said, Mom, no, there has to be some sort of loophole, some sort of way we can get around this, because I am, like I said, I was an arrogant 16-year-old, and even to this day, I never want to admit that my mom is right. I love my mom. She's the greatest person in the world, and most of the time she is right, but when she's around me, she can't find that out. So, my mom was like, yeah, I already checked, like there's no loophole here. Like, you need to go to college in Kansas. And it was like, all of a sudden it was like all the weight that I put on every aspiration I had ever had completely crushed me. All the weight that I put into my plans, into my dreams, all of a sudden it just crushed me. And I've had a lot of opportunities to be mad at God. And I would say that particular moment in my life where I found out I needed to go to school in Kansas was probably the most frustrated at God I've ever been. I mean, I've been handicapped since birth, and I've had my fair share of frustrations, but this was by far the most frustrated I was. So, you know, and guys, just for reference, when I cry, I am an ugly crier. There are some people, God bless their souls, who can tear up and move on. I am not one of those people. It is the whole 9 yards, the screaming, the wailing, everything else. So I remember I was just frustrated and bawling and wailing. And my mom's been my mom for forever, so she was like, I'm just gonna let you have your little meltdown. So she puts me in bed and she shuts the lights off, and all of a sudden it's pitch black. And she like shuts the door, and I remember I couldn't see anything, and I just sort of remember I had this vision of like all 50 states were neon lights, and then the neon lights slowly one by one they faded, and the only one I had left was Kansas, because that's really how it felt. You know, when you're 16 and searching for colleges, you think the whole world is your oyster, or at least America, and that was taken away from me at that moment. But then I remember looking to my left, and I have this tiny little cool Our Lady of Lourdes statue on my bedside table, and she glows in the dark. So I remember I looked at my little statue, and it was the only thing providing light at that particular moment. And I just remember feeling sort of a soft maternal presence at that moment. And I heard Mary say, you know, remember the other school that's about 3 hours away, whose colors are, you know, red and black. What about that school? And you see, guys, for reference, I had this caregiver. She was really, really lame and super bad at her job. Her name was Mary Jo, and she would come back from Benedictine every summer to nanny me when I was in middle school. She's right there in the teal shirt, by the way. She would come back from Benedictine every summer. We had some good pool times, some good jam sessions. But anyway, every time she would come back, she would just talk about Benedictine like the most magical Catholic fairy tale land ever. And I was like, you know what? It is, like, I really want to go there. But then I started researching it, and you know, it's beautiful and traditional, and it was built in 1858, which means there's a lot of historical significance and a lot of beauty, but that also means that it's usually not very handicapped accessible. So as I started researching it and really realizing, maybe this will be harder than it originally sounded, I just kind of shoved that option into the back of the closet, and I was like, oh, you party, like boomer sooner, whatever. And I was like, okay, I can go to OU. And Mary just kind of brought my attention back to that school, and she was like, what about the other school? What about the magical Catholic fairy dreamland? and I just remember at that moment, I was at my weakest point, and I remember audibly voicing the words, Mary, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I've already faced too much disappointment, and I don't want to go all the way to this amazing school and find out that that's not an option either. I can't deal with that. It'd just be too much. And like any good mother, she just kind of backed off and didn't really say anything. And after months and months and months and months of trying to find this loophole for the whole OU situation, I was exhausted, and I just sort of spiritually collapsed and didn't know where to go. And at that time, I didn't know it, but Jesus picked me up in his arms, and I had to have the strength to stay asleep. And I was like, you know what? Like, maybe, like, the Mother of God, like, is right every once in a while. Like, maybe I need to go truly investigate this. So I went to my mom and my dad, and I was like, Mom, Dad, like, we gotta go check this Catholic school out. And they were like, you're a pretty holy kid. Like, maybe we should go check it out. So I packed up my bags and headed to Benedictine with my friend Meg. And I remember right as we pulled into Atchison, some sort of, like, I can't even describe it, weird sense of peace just kind of washed over me. And we were like rolling down the cute little main street, and they were like decorated for Thanksgiving and fall, and I was like, oh, this is fun. And I was looking out the window, and all of a sudden I just cried. Like, tears started coming out of my eyeballs, because it reminded me of like the little town of Concordia where my dad grew up. And in the back of the car, I'm like squealing, trying to contain myself and not jump out of my chair. I'm like, Mom, I need to go here. Like, I have to go here. And she's like, all right, whatever. And then, so we pull up to the admissions building, which is beautiful, by the way. And I got out of the car and got even more emotional. I was like, it is a Catholic fairy dreamland. I was like, the tales they tell are true. And so we go up to the admissions office. We meet our sweet little bubbly tour guide. I still remember her name was Juliana. She's super cute. But she was like, hi guys, my name is Juliana, and I'm gonna show you guys around. And I remember, like, the little teenage brat I was like, Mom, don't come. Because, I didn't want to run into any curbs or run off any curbs. I've done that before. That's story for a different time. But I didn't want to do anything and have her be like, I told you so. So I was like, sit here, drink your coffee, like, be your cute little self, like, you'll be fine. So Juliana took my friend Meg and I around to some of her favorite spots on campus, and they're beautiful. Like I said, it was built in 1858, so it's a pretty incredible sight. But then I remember we all of a sudden turned this corner to Mary's Grotto, but it's designed to look like the one in France. So it has a giant replica of the exact same statue that was on my bedside table. And I just remember looking at it and being in complete shock. And I remember we prayed the Hail Mary, we lit the candle, we did the things. And I was like, this is way too providential for you not to want me to do something Mary. I don't know how the heck you're gonna get me here, but you gotta do it. Clearly you want me to do something. I don't know what it is. So at that moment, I had to climb back into Jesus' arms and fall asleep again. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm gonna do this. But clearly, somebody wants me to. And I found out later that they had actually buried miraculous medals in the ground and dedicated the campus to Mary. So Mary had a very large role as to why I'm at Benedictine. So I told my parents this story. They were like, oh, this sounds like a super holy story and a super good story. You should definitely go to Newman then. We were sorry about this WSU situation. Newman seems like the right fit for you. And I was like, no. And they were like, okay. So I remember one day I asked my teacher's permission to go outside of the algebra class. I was making all these phone calls to housing and residence, dean of students, being like, hi, I'm Kate Kelter. I felt like I was handing out record demos to become famous or something. I was like, here's my business card, you can reach me at this number, and just talking to all these people. And I just remember getting dorm sizes back and just being even more frustrated. And then I remember eventually we were at one of my friend's grad parties, and one of my friends has an uncle who he's nonverbal and he's wheelchair bound, and he went to a Methodist college about 3 hours away from his parents' house, sort of a similar thing to what I do now. So I was like, we gotta go hit them up. We gotta figure out what they did. I was like, what did you guys do? We need to figure out how to convince my mom. So we were all sitting there, and she was like, all right, what you need to do, the first step you need to do is set up a meeting with housing and residence, the dean of students, and the Office of Disabilities. And you bet your butt, I went home that night and I was like, hi, I'm Kate Kelter and I really want to come to Benedictine. And I put them in a pretty little group email and I was like, this is fun. And they all corresponded back within days, and I was a junior at this time, so I still had quite a bit of time, and they all corresponded within days. They were like, yeah, we could definitely meet this summer, in between our BCYC retreats, we can do this. And I was like, Mom, Dad, listen up. We got some business to attend to. So, we packed our little things again. I was like, I cannot wait to finally convince my parents. You could hear, the Eye of the Tiger track in the background. I was, very in it to win it. I was like, all right, let's go, we're gonna do this. So I remember, it was the second floor of the JP2 Student Center, and we sat in this big old conference room. And we all just sat there and started talking. And anyone who's been in a room with me for more than 15 minutes, you would know that we started laughing about 20 minutes in. And they were like, you know what, I don't see any problem with you going here. I think you could do it. This kid has the tenacity, this kid has the will, and it was like, keep it coming, where are the compliments at? And I just remember looking at my mom's face and looking at my dad's face in those moments. And at the moment, I knew that, like, they were scared to say yes to this decision, but they knew they needed to. And I still remember this moment. In fact, him and I still talk about it to this day. But the Dean of Students, Dean Wertz, turned around and looked at me and said, "Kate, this campus needs you." And I was just like, all right, we got something going on here. Like, clearly Mary's doing her job. Like, thank you, Mama. Like, thank you for coming in clutch. But, you see, I had to be at my weakest point in order for me to fall asleep. I had to literally exhaust every single resource that I had in order to even think about coming to Benedictine, in order to think about considering the school in the first place again. I had to exhaust every single resource, and I had to run and run and run, metaphorically obviously, until I was completely exhausted, and Jesus had to pick me up, and I had to stay asleep in his arms. But I also was nudged awake by him a couple times. Like that time when we met with my uncle's parent, or my friend's uncle's parents, and figured out what to do. I could tell that God needed me to act in order for me to do what he needs me to do. And you guys, staying asleep in the arms of God is way harder than it sounds. Like, there were days where I would send emails like, what are the door measurements? Or what are the measurements of this door? What are the measurements of that door? How are you gonna get the shower figured out? And bless their souls, they would try their best, but I wouldn't get emails back in days. And staying asleep in the arms of God in those moments where I wouldn't get emails for a month, guys, it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And have the courage to drive to Benedictine knowing that it may not work, knowing that something may happen, guys. It's the scariest thing I've ever done. But that being said, it's been the most monumental, wonderful, incredible thing I've ever done. I have the most amazing group of friends on planet Earth. MJ was like, at BC, relationships form really fast, and I was like, yeah, you're MJ, whatever, like, you're good at making friends. But no, she was right. I found the most incredible, amazing group of Catholic dorks I've ever met in my whole life. Half of us are ed majors. We call ourselves the ed heads. It's a beautiful time. All my professors, I love them so much. I could literally roll into their offices and talk to them whenever I want, which is something that I don't think I would have been able to do having gone to a big state school. So I guess what I'm trying to say is here is just the fact that it's so hard to surrender, and it's so hard to know when to surrender, and it's so hard when you're nudged by God and he says, hey, I'm here, I'm with you, but you need to act. Guys, it's so hard to balance that. And I'm not sitting up here claiming to have all the answers, but I can just tell you that it's paid off tenfold. Guys, I have a ministry position lined up for next year. I'm like living, I would say I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. And our Father is so poetic and beautiful and has opened himself up in ways that I would have never thought possible. And I've been able to be part of a community that, if I'm being truly honest, I never thought that I would ever be able to be part of a community like that. Like, I went to Catholic school, I went to public school for 14 years. I'd never gone to a Catholic school before, so it has just been the most amazing experience. So I guess if I were to leave you with one question, it would be this. When's the last time you've been weak enough to fall asleep in God's arms? And the next time he nudges you awake, are you gonna act and say yes? That's all I got for you.